Hold on.
This is Unwoken, where we tackle the hard-hitting issues and bridge the divide between the political left and right, from free speech and gun rights to the rise of wokeism in our schools, the media, entertainment, and even our government. We're diving deep with experts who are ready to speak the truth. We won't agree on everything, but it's time we learned how to talk. Really talk. The conversation starts now.
Welcome to Unwoken. I'm your host, Nico Lagan, and today I'm joined by none other than John Carpay from the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. And we're going to be talking about the Tamara Lich and Chris Barber sentencing, and of course about the video he just released 2 days ago where he addressed C2, C8, and Bill C9. Mr. John Carpay, what is going on? How you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. The country's not, but, heading into a nice Thanksgiving weekend with a little bit of extra time off. And I'm thrilled to see great interest in the video on C2, C8, C9, whereas Canada could be a police state by Christmas. Last time I checked, had 184,000 views. So I'm pleased with that. It's good that the word is getting out.
100%. I couldn't agree with you more. This is a hill I'm going to die on. This is something I talk about literally every day. We keep on talking about it. We have another show on Saturday night. We have we started, Jason Levine and I, a mashup. So we have there's the two of us. We have 4 guests, and that's exactly what we're going to be talking about tomorrow, the sentencing of Tamara Lich and Chris Barber. And obviously I'm going to bring up what's happening with Bill C2, C8, C9. Might as well start there since we're on the subject. In your video, I'm going to quote you here. You're saying that Canada will be a police state by Christmas if Parliament passes Bill C2, C8, C9 in their current form. You want to explain?
Well, C2 has now been not really withdrawn, but it's been put into a zombie state where it still exists, but it's not going to move ahead. So they have a replacement bill, C12, which I unfortunately have not had a chance to look at. So I'm spending I'll be spending part of a few hours on the Thanksgiving weekend to look at Bill C12 and see what still remains in there that is harmful. But even if C12 was a great piece of legislation with no problems, Bill C8, cybersecurity, gives federal cabinet ministers the power to kick a Canadian off the internet by ordering the telecommunications service provider to not give access to Nico, Lagan, or John Carpay or anybody else. Because if they decide that you are a threat to cybersecurity, and threat is not defined, and there's no protection in there for content. So it's very possible with the current wording, the cabinet minister could say, well, you've got these crazy conspiracy theories, like that there would be mandatory vaccinations and people would lose their jobs and get kicked out of university for not getting injected, bad conspiracy theories like that, or conspiracy theories that the government would freeze the bank accounts, So we don't like your conspiracy theorists. You are therefore a threat to our cybersecurity. So they're going to, they can get you kicked off the internet. That's Bill C8. If you want to challenge that, it's very problematic because you can take the minister's order to court. Okay. But then you need $100,000 of extra money that you not using for anything else, just sort of excess cash on hand. You need to spend $100,000 on a court action, which will drag on for years without a guarantee that you will win the court action. So practically speaking, it gives governments those powers, the power to order a designated provider, if you're lucky enough to be designated by the minister, to do anything or refrain from doing anything as the minister deems fit to protect against a threat to Canada's telecommunication system, and the power of government to inspect and companies that whoever they want to inspect and obtain confidential information without a warrant, and to review your systems and then declare if they're good enough or not good enough. And it disregards as well the fact that everybody is already super motivated to protect their own customer list, their own donor list, their own confidential data. People are already motivated and working very hard on that every single day. Every company in Canada is working very hard. They're self-interested. We don't need the government to step in and say, well, the Canadians are just a little bit too stupid and too incompetent to look after their own interests. So the government's going to get this power to inspect your cybersecurity system and tell you whether or not it's good enough. So it's very much a takeover of the. Together, these bills are a takeover of the internet. Each one is a partial takeover of parts of the internet. So when you bring the C2, now C12, and C8, and C9, and the Online Harms Act, which they've threatened to reintroduce, those four things together, you're going to have government control over the internet. This builds, by the way, on the Online Streaming Act, where the CRTC has power over the internet already right now to decide on Canadian content. Do you have enough Canadian content? And if you don't, maybe we're going to apply some pressure on you to have more Canadian, whatever that is, right? They get to define what's Canadian, not Canadian, which is also pretty absurd. It should be up to Canadians to decide what is Canadian content.
Not only that, but True Talk, do you know the Christian show? True Talk, they are trying to purchase a radio station out of Saskatchewan to continue. It's already a Christian station. They're trying to buy the rights to it, and the government blocked it. The CRTC said no, because they refused to put the DEI policies in place that the government expects. So now the CRTC has done something that's unconstitutional. They even say it in their ruling. I was talking with Leighton Gray, that I know you know, and even in their ruling, they're saying that they're going after Section 1 of the Charter of Right, but because they self-govern and this is in the best interest of people, they're still allowed to do it. It's absolutely insane, but that is what the CRTC did. So imagine if the government does have the power through Bill C8 to censor people, to literally cut them off the internet, because we went through the bill, and I think I went through it with you, and I'm already booking you for next week to do Bill C12, because we're going to deep dive into that one, because from what I saw, they removed like the $10,000 cap on money transfer. They removed the Canada Post being able to open her mail without a warrant, and there was something else that they removed, but I really want to sit down and look at it. But the point I was going to make is, if you look at Bill C9, the bill itself that is on cybersecurity threat is actually okay. Like, I worked in telecommunications for 20 years. Cybersecurity is one of the services that I offered for more than a decade. So I know exactly what it stands for, and I used to sell services to the federal government. So I know the type of services that they're looking at, the type of demands that they normally make, and the bill is not that crazy. The part that's messed up, and the part that we need to be very careful about, is the amendments that they're the amendments to the Telecommunication Act that they're trying to pass within that bill. The bill itself on cybersecurity is not that big of a deal. Like, they're asking for access to telco locations and stuff, which I've seen in the past. It's not something as a telco, as a telecommunication company, you like. You don't want to have people on your premise where your equipment is, but I've seen those demands before through RFPs. But that's not the problem. The cybersecurity is whatever. It's fine. It's the fact that they're amending the Telecommunication Act to give the power to the Minister of Industry, which is Mélanie Joly, one of the worst ministers Canada has ever had. She's literally an activist. She used to be an activist before she became a minister, and that's the person that wants the power to be able to kick people off the internet, and that with a disclosure agreement that would prevent either the telecommunication company or me, if I'm the one being blocked, from speaking about it. So there's no way for me to defend myself. But For the people out there that are wondering what you can do like me and get an American phone. My phone's not from Canada. I have an international plan that covers Mexico, US, and Canada, but my plan's in the US, so technically there's no way the US is going to implement that on my cell phone. So there's ways around it, but you need to be clever. I shouldn't have said that out loud, but hey, here we are.
Well, you know what? The fact that you can skirt an unjust law, it's good, of course, if people can have ways around it. If there's a life-saving health product that people benefit from that is being banned by Health Canada, and if you still have ways to access it, that's great. But that should never be a reason to rest on our laurels and acquiesce to an unjust law just because we have technological ways of getting around it. And again, it's good. I'm glad people do. I mean, that's very, very important. But this is, I appreciate your insights on C8 because, nobody objects to the whole idea of cybersecurity and properly protecting ourselves against hackers and ransomware fraudsters and, even foreign state actors, whether it's the communist Chinese or some, terrorists based in the Middle East. We all want the security, and so that's great. And I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So, it's good to get your perspective on Bill C8. Which aspects of the legislation are legitimate and not dangerous to civil liberties.
They're all dangerous because they're all they're asking for information that they probably, or access to things they probably shouldn't have. But at the end of the day, I've seen those before requested by major corporations and government, so I wasn't surprised because I used to work on RFPs, on requests for proposals from the government and major entities, so I'm used to those type of verbiage. But it's really the problem with Bill C8, and I think I said Bill C9 earlier by mistake, but the problem with Bill C8 is really that part is the first portion of the bill that's not even part of the bill. They're just stuffing that through to make amendments to the Telecommunication Act. So all the things that we're talking about right now is the amendments that they're trying to pass. And let me ask you this before we jump to Chris Barber and Tamara Litch, but considering what happened with Bill C2, where more than 300 civil organizations are supposed to have approached the government saying like, what the fuck are you doing? This goes against our freedom. You cannot do that. And it seems that they listened. It seemed like there was so much pushback that the portion that you and I identified months ago as being very, very problematic are now being removed. They're repassing the bill, as you said, as Bill C12. But seeing that, does that give you hope that if you and I continue doing what we're doing, talking about it, hammering this day in and day out, that it is a possibility that the same's going to happen with Bill C8? Because Bill C8 removed the amendments to the Telecommunication Act. I don't really have a problem with the rest. Like, I didn't see anything that jumped at me as a sales engineer that used to sell those services. But do you have faith that Bill C8 and Bill C9 could be... Bill C9 needs to be scrapped as a whole because there's nothing good in that bill. It's all bull. But do you have faith, considering that Bill C2 is being changed into Bill C12 and will probably die in Parliament, that Bill C8, Bill C9 could be modified and eventually Bill C63 if we continue doing our job?
Yes, I've always believed that the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. And so when people are doing nothing... Oh, and by the way, complaining to others is almost in the category of doing nothing, although there can be, some benefits to educating your friends, family members, neighbors, colleagues, etc. But this is not the first time in history, and it won't be the last, when citizens speak up. I think what made the difference, when citizens speak up, the governments respond, because most politicians are followers, not leaders. And that's neither good nor bad. I mean that in a descriptive way, right? Most politicians are just they're gonna follow, they're not gonna lead. This is the same reason why, like the Justice Center, one of our efforts is we've got a brochure on central bank digital currency. we want to educate the public and prevent it from ever being imposed on us. So therefore, because politicians are followers, not leaders, we're educating the public. If 90% of Canadians are against central bank digital currency, or even 80%, 70%, 60% of people are against it, then it's just not going to happen, right? So I am encouraged, and it does reaffirm my belief that when there's enough feedback, pushback against a bad law, then the people proposing the bad law, they change course.
And that's exactly what we're seeing here. So I didn't expect that, to be honest. When I read about it yesterday, I was actually very surprised, but at the same time, it kind of confirms that the work that I do every day, just trying to put that in the forefront, because people don't read 110 pages bill or 140 page for Bill C2. I don't remember how many pages in Bill C8 was 110 page, give or take. The Bill C63, I don't remember, but it was not a short bill either. So I think that what we do trying to educate people will do something, will actually help, because most people don't have the time, nor the will, nor the fortitude to go through those boring documents. And even if they did, they don't really have knowledge about what they're reading, right? They don't have access to a guy like you when I simply contact Julian and pow, you're already booked for another show on Tuesday. I'm just saying, as we were talking, I'm booking you so we can speak about Bill C12. But right now, let's talk about the reason that you're here, actually. Tamara Lich and Chris Barber. Because I know that the Justice Center represented Chris. So what are your impressions of, or what are your thoughts, not your impressions, what are your thoughts on the sentencing?
I have mixed feelings. The biggest feeling was relief that they were not going to jail. These are good, honest people. They did not engage in any violence. We didn't have what you see at other protests, right? Cars get set on fire and shop windows get smashed, and the police get assaulted, and the sections of the city get blocked off sometimes. Like you had this thing in Portland a few years ago where the I don't know if it was Antifa or somebody else had taken over a section of the city. Literally, I mean, they talked about the occupation of Ottawa, but the fact is, you could walk in and out and through. You could walk through Ottawa. And they kept lanes open for emergency vehicles. In any event, it's pretty amazing that when you think of Freedom Convoy went on for weeks and there were thousands of people, right? So it's one of the largest protests in Canadian history. And and there's no arson, there's no violence, there's no property destruction, there's no uttering threats, there's no criminal activity when you have thousands of people there for weeks on end. So I was, first of all, thrilled, relieved, happy that there was no jail time, because I was worried. I did not have confidence in this judge or any other judge that they might not, pursue this political agenda and jail Tamara Lich and Chris Barber over their political beliefs, because that's what motivated this prosecution in the first place. So then secondarily, I feel I'm disappointed, to be placed under house arrest for 18 months for Chris Barber, 15 and a half months for Tamara Lich. Compared to prison, it is paradise, because you can go to church, you can go shopping for 5 hours per week to do shopping. You can work. I believe you can have friends over to your own house. If you want to connect with your friends, you can't go meet them for a coffee or a beer, but you can still invite people to your own house. So compared to jail, it's a cakewalk. You're in the community. You're not locked up. You can work. But also, it is hugely inconvenient, because you can't just leave the house whenever you feel like it and just do whatever you want. You have to think all the time, like you are really restricted to your house to a large extent. So the biggest problem with the Tamara Lich, Chris Barber situation is just the double standard that you get prosecuted in Canada depending on what your beliefs are. And if you're pro-Palestine, if it's pro-Hamas, if it's pro-LGBTQ, if it's pro-Aboriginal, if it's something, if you believe that mankind controls the Earth's climate and you want to go marching in the street because you think the government's not doing enough to try to control the Earth's climate, all of those causes, you can get away with far more. I mean, maybe if you might get in trouble. Your chance of getting criminally charged if you're protesting for the correct cause is a lot smaller than if you were protesting against vaccine passports, against lockdowns, if you're protesting against abortion. Then those are the wrong, you're going to be in trouble, and you're more likely to find yourself locked up in jail.
And that's a fact. And the thing that surprised me, though, because I know that in certain cases like King, he had a gag order, like he wasn't able to talk about this online. But I didn't see anything in their Tamara Lynch in Chris Barber's ruling that they had such a gag order. Which, if I was them and I'm stuck at home all the time, I would be recording all the content I can, because in my opinion, we need Tamara and Chris to be voices against Bill C2, C8, C9, and C63, because they can talk firsthand what could happen. Can you imagine if they had access to those bills, if the Liberals had access to those bills 4 years ago? 3 years ago, that the freedom movement wouldn't have even started. They would have been able to disconnect people from their internet from the get-go and prevent that from ever becoming a thing. So I'm really hoping that they do continue getting involved. But man, considering what they've been through over the past 3 years, I can understand if they're like they need a break. We'll see what happens. But one of the things I was wondering, because there's no way that the Crown is happy with this. Because the Crown was expected, at least that's the feeling I had, is that they were expecting prison time. So do you think that the Crown is going to appeal the sentencing?
It would not surprise me at all. I don't know. I don't know what the Crown is going to do next. You do have to bear in mind, right? Typically, before you go into these hearings, the Crown asks for more than what it thinks it will get. It's kind of a negotiation, bargaining, type of thing. So they know that they're not going to, that they're very highly unlikely to get, 7 years of jail for Tamara Leach and 8 years of jail for Chris Barber. They know they're not going to get that. And when the defense counsel, said there should just be a discharge with no penalty. It's not really surprising that the judge kind of went, halfway between the two. Now, Chris Barber and Tamara Leach will have to decide whether to instruct their lawyers to appeal the conviction itself. That has not been appealed yet, because what typically happens is if there's a conviction, first you wait for the sentence, and then after that you appeal both. So now that the sentence has been imposed, and this is 3.5 years, almost 4 years after the arrest. But now that a sentence has been imposed, we might see Tamara Leach, Chris Barber appealing the conviction itself. And then the Crown might appeal the sentence, or they might just all decide that they're just done with it and they're just going to leave it alone. Maybe I don't know what these negotiations will be like.
Yeah, I'm very curious about that too. If they're gonna try to go to have the conviction repealed, but if they do, they could end up in a worse situation. It's a gamble at this point to see what Tamara and Chris will do. But I'm really curious to see also if the Crown is going to do something. But I know Chris is not done. Even if this is done, like even if that portion of the trial is done, I know that Chris is still, the government is still going after Big Red, right? They're trying to kill the symbol that Big Red is. And I believe that this case is completely different. Obviously, it's attached. There's dotted line between the two, but that was not part of the conviction that we heard or the sentencing that we heard this week. But are you guys representing him on the Big Red trial as well?
Yes, we're funding his lawyer, who is Diane Magus, and she's based in Ottawa. So thanks to the donations of people to the Justice Center. By the way, the donors, I'm so glad that so many Canadians have stepped up to the plate, because we are, for Tamara Leach and Chris Barber together, it's at least 2/3 It's at least 667,000 for the two of them together in the last 3.5 years. Now, currently, in the beginning, the Justice Center was paying for the criminal defense for both Tamara Leach and Chris Barber. And then at some point later on, Tamara Leach started instead to get legal defense paid for by the Democracy Fund. So people, should donate to the Democracy Fund as well. That pays for Tamara Leach's legal bills. The Justice Center has done initially both, and then up till now also still Chris Barber. So there's a court hearing coming up November the 26th, could be the 25th, but late November, there's another court hearing because the Crown is aggressively pursuing wanting to seize this truck and try to argue that it was a tool used in the commission of a crime. So we are fighting back hard on that. We think we have a strong position because, like all the other truckers, Chris followed police directives. The police said, park over here. So they parked over there. And then police would say, well, you have to move. Okay, we'll move. I believe at one point there was some delay that Chris got told to move his truck. And he said, well, I can't, it would be unsafe to do it at this moment right now because of whatever the situation was. But he did move his truck. All the truckers were following police instructions, which makes it so ridiculous that afterwards they get all these criminal charges for obstructing the lawful use of public property, which is a criminal code offense. You cannot obstruct people from using property, public property, private property. If you interfere with or obstruct people from going about their business, you can be criminally charged for that. But to get these charges,
you're the Free Palestine movement. Unless you're the Free Palestine, because you saw it in Toronto, they were preventing an ambulance transporting somebody severely injured to the hospital. And they had taken over a street and the ambulance had to go around. So it's okay for them to do it. It's okay for them to make noise after a certain hour because they just had, did you see that they just had there was a protest at the end of 2023, beginning of 2024, where there was a bunch of people, like hundreds of people got tickets for making too much noise after hours. All got canceled by the government of Ontario. And guys, in case you didn't realize this was not in front of the Supreme Court of Canada. This was in front of the Ontario court. So technically, Doug Ford could have done something about this from the get-go. He chose not to. So Doug Ford's not a conservative. Let's be honest here. He's a liberal, just like Mark Carney is. And
well, very, very much so. Very much so. He's not he's not a friend of freedom. But you have to remember as well, the way it's supposed to run in a democracy, we have the separation of the political from the prosecutions. The prosecutions are independent. We don't want to live in a country, most countries in the world, if you are the president's nephew and you get charged with impaired driving, the president will place a phone call to the police and say, oh, that's my nephew. Come on, just give him a warning. This is the norm for most of human history and for most countries in the world. Canada, the United States, Western Europe, some other countries around the world have been an exception historically and an exception geographically, where we have the rule of law, where the premier or the prime minister does not phone up the chief of police or the head of the prosecution service and tell them what to do. So I don't want to suggest, I think the problem here is that the Crown in Ontario itself is corrupted by ideology, and they're not thinking straight, and they will aggressively prosecute somebody that is against the vaccine mandates or lockdowns. But if you are for Palestine, or if you're an Aboriginal protester destroying a statue of Queen Victoria, you don't get criminally charged because you're protesting against residential schools, so that's okay. So I wouldn't accuse Doug Ford of phoning up his own prosecution services and telling them to, aggressively prosecute Tamara Leach and Chris Barber. Theoretically, that could have happened. I doubt it. But we still have a very serious problem with it's the Crown itself. Okay, even if they're not taking orders from Doug Ford, and they're probably not, it's the Crown itself that has that ideological corruption. That's the problem. And the same with the Crown prosecutors in Manitoba, where these Aboriginals protesting against residential schools tore down and vandalized a statue of Queen Victoria in broad daylight with police watching. That's just disgusting. That's a complete breakdown in the rule of law, and it brings the administration of justice into disrepute.
Couldn't agree with you more. Thank you for your time, John. We were booked for half an hour, but like I said, I'm already booking you for probably next Tuesday so that we can sit down and review. You and I need to go through Bill C-12 like we do over every bill that seems to make sense over the past few months. So once again, I want to tell you, I appreciate you. Thank you for coming on the show. Basically, anytime I want you to come on. I want to thank you for the work that you're doing for the Canadians out there that are getting their rights violated. And, I'm happy I know you because one day I might need you. So it's a beautiful relationship that we have, and I really appreciate it. And I don't know if you had something you wanted to pitch before I close off the episode, but the floor is yours.
I would say happy Thanksgiving to you and your family. And this will be the first Thanksgiving for your son, who is what, 2 or 3 months old now?
He turned 3 months yesterday. See, that's how much we know each other. Yeah, he turned 3 months yesterday. Thank you.
To all the viewers and listeners, have a great Thanksgiving weekend. Maybe to take a break from politics, but only for 3 days. Tuesday morning, October 14th, I want you to contact your member of parliament and tell them to vote against Bill C8, C9, and probably C12.
So, guys, if you've enjoyed this show, make sure to make sure to reshare the stream. I always want to hear from you guys. So if you're watching when it's not live, you're watching the unlive version, make sure to leave us a comment. I want to know what you guys are thinking. And on that note, I'm going to wish you a happy Thanksgiving weekend, at least to our Canadian listeners. And we will see you tomorrow night, 9 p.m. We will have a Saturday night mashup where we will be diving into this once again. So have a good day, and we'll see you tomorrow.